Gotta be here.
This is the place to be.
So with that, we're gonna start the workshop portion of our meeting from 7 until 7:30, at which point we will switch over to the regular agenda. So with that, we thought it would be good to talk a little bit about Planning Board 101 and SECRA 101.
Yeah.
A little bit of a recast of, especially with SECRA, some of the things that we've reviewed in the past, but always worth a refresh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so apologies if you've seen this presentation before, because I have done it. It's been a couple years, but hopefully there'll be a pop quiz at the end.
I think for SECRA, we could do it frequently and still learn something.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about SECRA basics, or SECRA 101, but first, I spoke to the chair about starting with sort of a civics 101, just to kind of reorient and discuss, what our role of what the role of the planning board is in relation to the city council and the zoning board, and how they all interact together. So I think that's always a good place to start with as a refresher, not just for the board, but also members of the public who are listening too. So
Fantastic.
We'll talk about the source of the planning board's authority and its role in relation to zoning laws and other boards in the city. So first, the city council. That's where it all starts. So the city council is obviously the legislative body comprised of elected officials. They adopt your local laws, adopt your code, and set the policy for the city. So an example of this is the comprehensive plan that's adopted by the city council sets the policy, sets the vision for the city, with input from the public, obviously. And then zoning laws are adopted consistent with the vision in the comprehensive plan. And that's all done by the city council, by your elected officials. Then we have the zoning board. The zoning board is a board that is required by state law. Every municipality has to have a zoning board. And it's empowered by state law to grant use variances and area variances. I know we're all familiar with the differences between the two variances. They do both have separate and distinct standards of review that the zoning board has to follow, and where the applicant meets those standards as judged by the zoning board has the power to vary or modify the zoning code as it relates to that applicant. So it's sort of the relief valve. Because we have a zoning code, we have to have a zoning board to provide relief for particular and unique circumstances. Because zoning is it's never a one-size-fits-all endeavor. There's always going to be exceptions or modifications that need to be made for particular circumstances. The other thing the zoning board does is it hears appeals of building inspector determinations. So if the building inspector interprets a provision of the zoning code a certain way, and the property owner feels aggrieved by that particular determination, thinks the building inspector got it wrong, they can appeal that to the zoning board, and the zoning board acts as the appellate authority for review of interpretations of the zoning code. And then we have the planning board. So the planning board is an administrative board that's actually not required by state law. Not every municipality has a planning board. In some municipalities, the legislative body retains that land use authority. So the planning board's authority is really limited to that which the city council, your legislative body, delegates to the planning board, as set forth in the zoning code. And you'll see you've got various pieces of authority in the code for site plan and subdivision, and now a lot more special permits than you ever used to. The city council in the past had retained that authority to themselves instead of delegating it to you. Over the past couple of years, they've acted to give you more of that authority over special permits. In fact, it might be all special permits now at this point, I think. The planning board reviews each of those types of applications that have been delegated to it within the confines of the standards that are set forth in the zoning code, again, that are legislated by the city council. So here, as you know, you have site plan authority, subdivision authority, you have special use permit authority, as we mentioned, and you also act as the architectural review board. So you guys wear a lot of hats when it comes to land use in the city of Beacon. In applying the standards that are set forth in the code, you do have a good deal of discretion in interpreting what they mean and applying those to each application. But that discretion is not completely unfettered. We do have to recognize that those standards are adopted sort of with a balance. You got to strike a balance between an applicant's constitutional property rights, right, and the legitimate controls that are put in place through zoning to protect the community, to protect what's called the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. So you're always trying to strike that balance between those sometimes competing interests, right? Most times competing interests. Now, before I move on to SECRA, I just want to touch upon sort of your overarching standard of review. I think this is always important to kind of go back to and remember that every single decision made by the planning board, made by the zoning board, has to have a rational basis in the record. That means there has to be support in the record for your decision. Otherwise, a court might find your decision to be, quote unquote, arbitrary and capricious. The record is everything that's before you. It's the application materials, it's testimony from the public, memos from John Russo and Natalie. It's meeting notes,
video.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's everything that has been presented to you for you to make your decision. You really should not be and cannot be relying upon like a gut feeling or personal opinion when judging applications. We can't, as a planning board, just deny an application because you personally don't like it or there's a groundswell of public opposition against it. It's not a popularity meter. We have very specific standards that we need to go by. And I know you all know this, and we're just doing this as a refresher. It is, yeah. It's just good to kind of level set and remember that. So again, kind of overarching, city council sets the standards, and you determine whether an application meets those standards. So that's our quick civics lesson for the day. And now with the time remaining, I'll go through some SECRA basics.
Just real quick though,
Yeah.
any questions?
Any questions about that?
No? Pretty clear?
No? Okay, good. All right, so I do have slides. Whoops, how do I? Why is it not?
Quick, what does SECRA
advancing?
stand for?
There we go.
State Environmental Quality Review.
Gold star to Len.
I had to look at the letters.
Extra credit point. All right, so we'll talk about what is it, why do we use it, and how do we use
I
it.
didn't read it off the screen, but it was there.
SECRA.
I like it with the A.
know,
Some people leave off the A. Okay, so what is SECRA? Well, in 1975, the New York State Legislature adopted a set of statutes called the Environmental Conservation Law. And then a year later, the Department of Environmental Conservation adopted a set of regulations called SECRA. So those regulations are designed to implement what we know as SECRA today. And, oh, yeah.
I'm assuming other states have something very similar.
Yes, so NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, that's the national standard, so federal actions go under NEPA. Most states have what they call little NEPAs.
Some version of NEPA.
Some version of it, yeah. Not all, but.
We had to be
but many.
different and make our own and call it SECRA.
Yes,
California too, was the secret with a C.
yes. Yeah, and
What's
actually
this?
the city, New York City has its own version of it as well. So the purpose is to assess environmental effects of discretionary actions, so not, checking boxes, issuance of a building permit, checking boxes and issuing a permit, but discretionary actions that can be reviewed and approved or denied at your discretion based on standards. When applied as it's intended, SECR is really meant to be a tool for infusing environmental considerations into the decision-making process so that we can create better and more sustainable, less impactful projects. So that's the whole point of why we do SECR. It's not the intent of SECR that environmental factors, your typical, birds and bunnies and bees and wetlands, that is not supposed to be the sole consideration when we're talking about SECR. Instead, SECR requires those factors to be balanced with social and economic considerations as well. So, for example, if you have a project that might result in some wetland buffer or, direct wetland impacts, but it's going to bring a whole host of needed affordable housing to the community or bring, much needed jobs to the community, that's a balancing that is done during SECR to weigh those various factors. Courts have also said that an agency does not have to investigate every conceivable environmental problem. It may, within reasonable limits, use its discretion in selecting which ones are relevant. And that goes to this overarching theme in SECR called a rule of reason. It's governed by a rule of reason, is what the courts usually say, in balancing the various considerations and applying the regulations reasonably. So there's two different categories of compliance, procedural and substantive. Procedural compliance is exactly what it sounds like, strict compliance with the procedures that are set forth in the regulations. So an example of that is SECR requires that projects that are classified as type 1, and we'll go through what type 1 means, require a full environmental impact statement. So the 13-page, not environmental assessment form, the EAF, that full 13-page EAF. You're familiar with the EAFs. They get submitted with every single application, but there's a short form and a long form. Type 1 requires the full. If an applicant does not submit the full for a type 1 action, and that's not caught during the board's review, if that SECR determination is ultimately challenged, that person challenging it will win. Courts have overturned SECR determinations where the wrong form was used. So again, that strict compliance is really important. And that's part of what my office does, and Natalie's office, and John's office. We all make sure that those strict procedures are being followed as the board reviews the various applications. So substantive compliance is, the courts will look at whether the board took a quote-unquote hard look. So this is getting to more of the substance of the application and its environmental impacts. So courts will look to see whether the board did a couple of things. One, identified the relevant areas of environmental concern. So, what is the particular issue at hand for that application? Is it wetlands, traffic, steep slopes, stormwater? What are the relevant aspects? Did the board take a hard look at those relevant issues of environmental concern? And a hard look has been defined by the Court of Appeals, the state's highest court, as a thorough investigation of the problems involved. So again, kind of amorphous, not very specific, but it really means it's not a rubber stamp. You really have to analyze how a project is proposing to address the impact that's been identified, either through avoidance or minimization or mitigation measures. And then the last thing the court's going to look at is whether the board, when it made its SECR determination, so if you issue a negative declaration, did you make a reasoned, what's called a quote-unquote reasoned elaboration for your decision? And what that really means is you're going to state for the record why there will be no significant adverse environmental impacts. That's, every time we do a negative declaration and you have before you that multiple page document that goes through each of the impact categories, that is your reasoned elaboration. We're citing to documents that have been put into the record and explaining why you believe that there will be no significant adverse environmental impact. And that all goes to the importance of creating that record. Because if and when a decision is challenged, the court is only going to look at that record. That's the only thing that the court is allowed to look at. So if we don't have support in our record for the decision that's being made, that's going to make you vulnerable to having your decision be overturned.
I have a quick question. if I
Yeah.
may. So, you mentioned the steep slopes, which is a beacon law itself. What other, do we know off the top of our heads what city-specific laws we have? Like, do we have we have drinking water wells, do we have a wellhead protection area?
That
you
would be
know-
under Department of Health, that would automatically come into play.
Okay. Is there anything else that just we ought to, as a board, just have in the back of our minds that are the unique laws to Beacon other than steep slopes?
I mean, you do have a wetlands provision.
And that's
Yeah.
pretty, I mean, like,
But ones that are specific to, I mean, you have the Fishkill Creek Development District, which has, some particular requirements for that district. Off-
Not a buffer zone specifically.
right, it's not, yeah, I'm thinking like specifically of environmental stuff. Like we know when there's wetland protection, there's habitat and wildlife, sensitive receptors or species or whatever, but then we have that steep slopes, maybe that's the only one that's.
Yeah, but just because there might not be a code provision on the books,
Yeah, it
let's
doesn't-
say,
it
for
doesn't
example,
excuse us for it.
wetlands.
I'm just thinking, is there
Under
anything
secret,
we
you
should-
still review the impacts to
Yeah, I
that
know.
resource, yeah.
I just wanted to know if there was anything else unique to our code.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head that I don't also see in other communities. I mean, historic preservation is another one. You have a pretty robust
View sheds, did we
Provision.
mention that?
Oh, that's fine, yeah.
view sheds,
We
yeah,
have the
you
view
do
sheds.
have view shed protection.
Yep.
The waterfront plan, right?
The LWRP, the local
LWRP.
waterfront revitalization plan, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, so those are all good,
There's some good
good
stuff there.
examples.
Yeah, but I think it just behooves us to kind of repeat it. and
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the mental list that you have to tick through when you're looking at stuff.
So, with the last 10 minutes or so, we're just going to go very quickly through the basic framework of SECRA. So the step-by-step process. Starting when the application is filed, the first thing that we do is we classify the action. Is it type 1, type 2, or unlisted? Type 1 being, and there's literally lists in the SECRA regulations that specify categories of types of applications that will be type 1 and categories of applications that will be type 2. Type 1 are those that DEC has already determined are more likely than not going to require an environmental impact statement or a positive declaration. Not all the time. Just because it's type 1 doesn't necessarily mean that an environmental impact statement is required. It's just more likely than what we'll talk about. It's an unlisted action. Type 2 are those that DEC has categorically determined will not result in significant adverse environmental impacts. So those are exempt from SECRA review altogether. That's construction of a single-family home, more minor applications like that. And then unlisted are literally that. They're not on the type 1 list, they're not on the type 2 list, they're unlisted. So the board, similar to a type 1, makes its determination as to whether there's a significant impact. This step, the classification, is typically done, by your staff and consultants before it even gets to your board for the first time.
Quick example of an unlisted type of application, if you don't mind.
2-lot subdivision, 3-lot most of the subdivisions that you see on your agendas are unlisted.
Yeah. And they remain unlisted, that's simply their category.
Yeah. So, and that's why that step is typically done, by your staff and consultants before it comes to your board, because it's sort of black and white. It is what it is.
Yeah.
There's no discretion involved in classifying the action. The next step is determining who the lead agency is going to be. And you're familiar with this stuff. This is when you authorize circulation of your notice of intent to be lead agency. Lead agency being the board that's going to have responsibility to review the environmental impacts of the project as a whole. there might be any number of boards and agencies at the local, county level, state level, even federal level that have some kind of approval authority over the project, whether it's a New York State DOT highway work permit, a variance from the zoning board, a zone change from the city council. So each of those agencies or boards that have an approval authority are technically eligible to be the lead agency. In most projects, it's the planning board that serves in that role, because you guys have the expertise. Sorry, city council, sorry, zoning board, but you guys typically have the expertise to be the lead agency.
I don't think I've once yet seen anyone, once we declare intent, come back and say, oh, no, I want to be lead agency.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And when there is a fight like that between who wants to be lead agency, it goes up to the DEC commissioner, and the commissioner decides who's going to be
Sounds
lead
like fun.
agency. So when you have a type 1 action, you have to have a lead agency. When you do unlisted actions, you can do what's called an uncoordinated review, where each of those individual agencies does their own environmental review, separate and apart from everybody else. We don't typically recommend that because each agency has to review the whole project, not just what's within their jurisdiction. So it ends up being very duplicative and just not very helpful.
So we usually declare intent to act on both,
As lead agency,
type 1
yeah.
and type 2.
Type 1 and unlisted.
And
right.
unlisted,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So, moving on, so once we have our lead agency, the next step is for the lead agency to determine significance. So are you going to do a neg deck or a pos deck? Is there the potential for a significant adverse environmental impact or not? So the question I always get asked when I do this presentation is like, well, what's significant? How do we know what significant is? And it is a little bit subjective. It's going to change community to community. What's significant in, Yonkers might not be significant in, Clinton County. So it is going to change as far as that threshold is concerned. But typically what you would look at is the magnitude of the project, so the size or the extent of the impact, and the importance of the project, which SECR has defined to mean how many people are impacted, the geographic scope, and the probability of an impact occurring. This is typically a step that can be time consuming. Technically, under the regulations, you're supposed to make your determination of significance 20 days after you establish lead agency, or what's more often used, 20 days after you've received all the information necessary to make that decision. So there's this one case that I always like to cite too from 2005 out of the town of Marlborough. And there, the planning board took 853 days to make their determination of significance. But the court said, that's fine. The court said, in our view, the planning board as lead agency painstakingly undertook to gather substantial data regarding the application, holding public hearings and public meetings and hearings in order to receive and consider evidence from all interested parties. Following the expiration of the deadline for submissions, the planning board issued the negative declaration at its next regularly scheduled meeting. Thus, we conclude the declaration was not untimely. Now, obviously, that's not an ideal situation. You don't want to take that long to issue a neg deck. And we need to remember that, SECR should not and cannot be used as a weapon or as a delay tactic. Unfortunately, we see that sometimes, typically not here in Beacon, but I have seen that in other communities where SECR is unfortunately used as this delay tactic, but we
Used for
don't want to.
slow walking, yeah. They use it for slow walking.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm sure, I know we all know this, but a negative declaration is a finding of no significant environmental impact.
Correct. Negative declaration ends the SECR process,
Right.
meaning there's no significant impact. And there's a quote from the Suffolk County Supreme Court from 2008 that I like on this issue of SECR being used as a weapon. And the court said the purpose of SECRA was never intended to be a weapon indiscriminately used to frustrate legitimate applications by property owners for reasonable development of the property for which they pay taxes. The purpose of SECRA was to require responsible redress of actual environmental concerns in order to mitigate impacts in a rational and productive manner. So that goes to one of the first things we said, that SECRA is a tool to arrive at a better project. The next 3 steps we're going to talk about in the next 4 minutes relate to what happens if the board determines that there may be one or more significant adverse environmental impacts, and you issue a positive declaration. So the next step that's going to happen then is you're going to undertake scoping, which is a mandatory process as of 2019. And a scope is basically the written document that outlines all the issues that are going to be studied in the environmental impact statement. It's really intended to narrow the issues only to those that are relevant and have been determined to be potentially significant. Then, after the scope is finalized, the applicant's going to go on their merry way and prepare the draft environmental impact statement. And that's the voluminous document. Sometimes in the old days, you'll see binders and binders full of these documents. Now they're, a lot of megabytes, I guess, electronically. But it examines the nature and extent of all potentially significant adverse environmental impacts, as well as alternatives. And that's one of the keystone features of an environmental impact statement, is the analysis of alternatives. So the applicant is required to study not just their proposed project, but a number of reasonable alternatives that are feasible for the applicant and meets their objectives. So typically you'll see like a lesser density alternative, or an alternative of a building with a lesser height, a different layout of the proposed building. So there'll be a number of alternatives studied. Then, after the DEIS is prepared and accepted by the lead agency is complete, there's a public hearing. Then the applicant prepares the final environmental impact statement that responds to literally every substantive question and comment, both in writing and verbally, issued on the DEIS. Once the final environmental impact statement is prepared and accepted, we then move on to the last step of SECRA, which is the finding statement. The finding statement is where the lead agency sets forth its rationale for deciding which among those alternatives that were studied is the one that produces the least amount of impacts, while balancing those environmental factors and the social factors and the economic factors. And once that finding statement is issued, SECRA is complete. I do want to mention one other thing. There are a lot of resources on SECRA available on the DEC website. This is the SECRA handbook. There was a new edition just released a couple years ago. It's it's super thick, as John was just mentioning, but it's really user-friendly. It's sort of in a question and answer format. So this is a really good go-to resource, but there's flowcharts and lots of fun information and resources available on the DEC website if you're interested in learning more. And that's,
Thank you.
I usually do that whole thing. I usually do that whole thing in like an hour presentation.
Yeah, it's
I
a lot to jam in 20
ran
minutes.
through that and
So, thank
left
you.
a lot of nuances out. But
Good refresher. So welcome everybody to the June 2024 meeting of the City of Beacon Planning Board. First order of business is to adopt last month's meeting notes, assuming there are no adds, changes. I'll accept the motion to adopt last month's meeting notes into the record.
Motion.
Motion by Kevin,
Second.
second by, is that David? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then we'll go to the first item on the agenda, and that is our continued public hearing and review of application for site plan approval and special use permit, car dealership at 410 Fishkill Avenue, submitted by Carvana LLC. Good evening.
Good evening. I am not Taylor Palmer. I am Allison Fauster. I'm an associate attorney with the law firm Cuddy and Fader, appearing on behalf of the applicant, DKH Realty and Carvana. Tonight I'm joined by our project engineer, Daniel Kohler from Hudson Land Design, as well as Jennifer Roldan, senior project manager from Carvana. We're here before you tonight in connection with our applications for a site plan and special use permit for a vehicle sales facility at the property located at 410 Fishkill Avenue. Since we were last before you last month, we did submit a supplemental submission on the 28th that included responses to outstanding comments from your board and your consultants, as well as a revised site plan, revised lighting plans, and some vehicle turning diagrams. Before I turn over to Dan to take you through a couple of those minor updates, I would note for the board, and this was included in our supplemental submission, that we did receive variance relief related to the parking spaces on the property, and that we received and reviewed the draft site plan and special use permit approval resolution that's before your board tonight. So I'll turn over to Dan to just take you through a high-level overview of those project updates.
Thanks.
Okay, so in general, you were provided with some loading zone movements for the 9-car hauler and how that would work. In essence, the Colliers who did our transportation, unfortunately, Rich is not able to be here tonight. He's got a little emergency at home. So I can certainly try to answer any questions you might have about that, but it did lead to us moving and relocating a few things on the site. So there was previously, around where the cursor is, there was another planter, and there was actually a light pole generally over in this area. And we ended up shifting the lights more towards the middle where there's no need for the car movement. So if the truck comes from the south, the vehicle will back off of the hauler and make its way through the site and through, generally across from Conklin Street. If it comes in from the north, then the vehicle would back off and actually make its way in between the sign and this planter over in here. So in essence, what we did was we ended up losing one planter there, but we ended up putting more plantings in along near the existing sign, and we put 4 more along the front of the building, which has that large overhanging canopy. So that was some of the major things we did there. We also revised lighting in a few of the other areas there. The applicant's lighting consultant came up with a newer plan. I think it's much more in line with the city code. One thing that carried over from the existing conditions plan we showed had the old existing light pole that was here. And it said to be removed on the existing conditions plan, but it still showed up in the site plan. So what we've done is I've just for tonight's meeting, I've already just removed that. I put it onto a layer that's frozen so you don't see it, because that light pole will be gone. So
Sorry, which one is that? That's the
the
north
one up on here on
Yeah.
the north side. Yep. That's generally it. We also did just a very small change to some striping up in the front for the accessible parking space. We have an 8-foot loading zone next to that now. We were reusing what was existing, which was a 5-foot, but so now we have an 8-foot wide loading zone there too.
Thanks. I'm
Thank you.
curious, you included some diagrams, alternate internal delivery arrival for the car hauler, some of them showing just that, sort of scenarios for delivering internally. Are there situations when the car hauler would be making those maneuvers within the site?
No, I think the intent of that was to show the difficulty of any kind of movement. So if you're coming from the south, what he was showing is that he can't actually get into the site with the one movement.
That's figure 3?
That would be, let me pull them up actually, because he gave us the new ones without the planters there now as well. So if you bear with me for a second. Which figure is this right here? This thing is not moving very well right now. For some reason, I apologize. Still on figure 2 somehow. That's 2A. Okay. So this is the figure of the truck making its way in when coming from the south.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so it clears up for me what you're trying to illustrate here. That
Right.
Because what it, at least to my view, illustrates is that you're constricted by a number of the existing parking spots.
Not only that, it's just the property is not very deep.
Yep.
And so these things take very wide turns. And then once you get in the site, so if you're coming from the north, you can see he can swing into the site, but then once he gets in there, he's got to try to maneuver back behind the building with this overhang of the roof here, and in Rich's opinion, that wasn't proper maneuvering that would allow for that to happen.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Anything else at the moment from your
That's it for me.
group? Okay. So then, yeah, we're in open public hearing. But first, just want to make sure that we touch on, and applicants clear on any of the open items still yet to be addressed in the application. So Natalie, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, summarizing my letter, there was not any major open items left. I think this board has talked a lot about the frontage and landscaping of the site and control of vehicle movement. I think we've talked a lot. This is kind of both for the public and just a reminder, like the 500-foot kind of frontage of this property currently as it stands has very little to stop cars from driving on and off the site, right? There's no curb, there's no sidewalk. So I think the application has come a long way, either using planters or wheel stops along a majority of the property frontage to control kind of where cars are turning in and out of this site. So that's an improvement. I think there was conversation about, is it possible for their curb and sidewalk I think that came up in the public hearing at the last meeting, to be land banked, and that's not a comment coming from planning. I think that was something for legal or the board to discuss further. With regards to the lighting plan, they are now showing a compliant plan in terms of lighting levels and temperatures and color indexes. Everything that was provided on the most recent lighting plan is compliant with section 223-14B of the lighting code. And then my one remaining comment, that's again a little bit outside of planning, but we have repeatedly noted that there are items on the rear portion of this site that are crossing over the property boundary into the MTA Metro North property, including pavement, fencing, kind of the refuse area. And I know the applicant has said that they are working with MTA Metro North to kind of address those encroachments. I just wanted to flag that. I don't know if that needed to be referenced in terms of cleaning that up, if that needed to be referenced in the resolution, draft resolution.
I would assume yes, and that it is.
It is in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
thanks. Thank you. Let's talk quickly about the land banking. We discussed this a little bit today on our call. And knowing that there is a committee currently under way studying, potential rezoning of that 52 Fishkill Avenue corridor, I'm assuming, I would hope that part of their studies and analysis is just that, right? How, when thinking about parcels and zoning and obviously all the other concomitant requirements, along that east side. What I'm curious about is whether in this case or in the case of, some form of rezoning, just the mechanisms for that taking place. Because at least it sounds to me like it's a little bit of an area of need for negotiation with a landowner, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I can
Yeah.
feel that one. So absent a specific authority in your code, like you have in the Fishkill Creek Development District, right? You have a provision in there that says an applicant in the Fishkill Creek Development District has to provide a greenway trail. Here in the GB District, there's not a similar type specific authority that would require that property interest basically to be given over to the city. So absent that, you wouldn't be able to unilaterally impose reservation of an easement or fee title of the property for sidewalk purposes as a board. But as you mentioned, John, it's a discussion point to have with the applicant as to whether or not there's an opportunity there. I think what the mechanism here would be, absent a zoning code provision, the mechanism here perhaps would be a condition where the owner would present the city with an offer of dedication of an easement for the city to accept at some point in the future for use for a sidewalk. So it's a topic of discussion
Right.
with the applicant.
So just so I have this straight, there is potentially with future new rezoning, the ability for the city to enact new zoning that would require something to this effect for properties along that corridor, correct?
Potentially.
Yeah,
I mean, you do have that provision right now in your Fishkill Creek Development District
So
with
something
respect to
similar
the
could
Greenway
end
Trail.
up,
Yeah.
could end up making its way into
Potentially.
new zoning for this area.
There's also I think the potential that, the city would be putting a new sidewalk and curbing in the public right-of-way, right, rather than on private property. I think where the question came up is the Fishkill Avenue Committee is not at the point yet where they've kind of fully,
Totally, get it.
So it's, I think it's more of like
Still early.
leaving the option open if space is limited and
Sure.
an additional space from private properties is needed, rather than imposing necessarily that it will in fact be there.
Yeah. So that's fair, that's helpful.
Yeah.
To my thinking, there's only one question to ask. Have you had any substantive conversations with the owner or your applicant about the possibility of an offering in this case?
Yes, we had a conversation with the client and owner this afternoon and just talking about any sort of reservation of land for sidewalks or parking areas. I think we've touched on all the parts that Natalie and Jennifer have talked about, which is we're not certain, how much land would need to be set aside and how it would impact our specific project and how the project's laid out. I'm specifically looking at the parking spaces along Fishkill Avenue, and of course we just got parking relief, which is limited to amount of parking spaces that we do need to show on the property. So as soon as we're starting to reserve some of that land, that excess land,
You're
it
talking
could
about that
impact our
parking.
parking counts and cause us to become non-conforming. There's also impacts to the loading area if we put a sidewalk there. Well, we just saw kind of Dan go through all of those examples where it's hard for us to get that hauler onto the site, so there could be issues with that as well. That being said, we're happy to have continuing conversations, with the committee, with how we can beautify this area, how we can help them and contribute with it. I don't think we're at a position where we'd want to necessarily agree to offer for dedication any amount of land.
So, okay, that answers the question. Just, again, curious, Natalie or Jen, what is the opportunity for future sidewalk construction in the public right-of-way? Is there width? Is there available? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends on what you're trying to fit within the right of way, right? So you have to make determinations between how wide is the sidewalk,
Yeah.
how much of a buffer do you want, how wide do the lanes have to be. So I think there is a reality where there could be sidewalks on both sides,
Yeah.
depending, in the public right of way. It's when you try and it's like, what other things are you adding? How wide are the lanes? Is there a landscaped median that, it's when you start to, it's that little street mix
Yeah.
app that's online where you're adding things into your limited right-of-way
Yeah, I'm
space.
thinking boulevard effect, planting strip in the middle.
Yeah.
Off Park Avenue, yeah.
Can I?
Thank you. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to see if there was any discussion about having a bike lane along there. There's a number of, this side of the street isn't heavily, there isn't a lot of construction, there's not a lot of curbs, it is an opportunity there when that gets reconstructed.
Are you on the committee? You should be.
I,
They didn't invite you?
people, it's
You should
an
just
area of
show up.
discussion.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, a number of people have, including there's groups that I've talked to that are really trying to encourage that as a way of promoting that kind of local connectivity between a lot of points in Beacon. And, you know, you have to have, like the Creek Trail, you have to connect all the dots.
Yeah,
You
I
have
mean,
to
I don't
have
want to
a
get
lot
off the
of
topic of
yeah.
this project, but I think that is what the committee is looking at, is accommodation of all modes and ages and vehicles, right? So I think that's definitely what that committee is looking at.
That's great. And you're consulting with the committee?
Yeah, I'm the
So you're
planning
talking right-
liaison to
Right,
that, yeah.
right.
Cool.
And was there anything that would prevent that from occurring?
I think what we were just
Physically?
talking about, right? There's a limited right-of-way space, and you have to have, it becomes trade-offs of what you want on your street, right? If you only have 30-foot width of road or 33 width, you need 11-foot lanes, you want 5-foot sidewalks, you need 2-foot buffers, it starts to eat away. So that's where these negotiations with the private properties on other side becomes important, because that's the only way to add more space where there isn't space right now.
Right, and just understanding as other projects basically get not rebuilt or redeveloped, but, you know, the existing buildings get rented like this. This sort of condition is going to happen along Fishkill Avenue with the other abandoned, empty buildings, right?
Yep.
That somehow we keep in mind, if we have a sense of what sort of width, what sort of changes might be contemplated, that we could have an expectation that like permanent change wouldn't occur that would
Yeah,
prevent
I wish
those
it was
things.
constant along the corridor. That would make
Yeah.
things very easy if the width of the road and the right-of-way stayed the same. It doesn't always.
That's the sort of thing I was asking.
We got to get back on topic. Thank you. Mr. Tully. I mean, Russo, Jesus. Excuse me.
You became a principal.
I am.
I was just thinking about her. Sorry about that.
So basically, some of the comments I had beside what Natalie had to do with what Mr. Kohler spoke about, the light pole that was still shown in the access aisle. If that were to remain, the lighting plan would have had to have been adjusted. And then the plans for the car hauler, the diagrams that were shown, you know, it did show a vehicle unloading going through a planter, so the plan should be consistent.
Yeah. So, Dan, you mentioned that light pole is coming off your drawings. I'm assuming then you've updated your lighting levels to reflect that.
So the plan that was provided actually did not use that as an actual
Oh,
light.
it didn't? Oh, so it's just
Exactly. So there's
erroneously-
no change to that
Got it.
actual lighting plan that you have.
Right, I
It's-
was-
It's a grayed out light pole that's still there on that plan, but there's no light head on that.
Understood. Okay, thank
I
you.
was just
Yeah.
making the comment, if that light pole were to remain, the lighting plan would have to be updated to
I
account
see.
for it, because
Yeah.
it didn't.
Yep, okay. And then, what about the hauler driving over another car? What is that? Oh, driving over a planter.
Yeah,
Has that been resolved?
yes. So those were the new plans that Dan showed tonight.
You can see it up on the board. The last planter that would have been all the way to the left has been removed.
Yeah, I see.
It was
And
just an
Rich-
error that it showed that it would drive through the planter, so we moved that.
Okay.
Right. So Rich has updated the plans to also show that that planter is shifted.
Gotcha. Okay, any questions or comments around the board for the applicant before we go to the public?
I'm okay.
You good? Yeah. Good. Questions?
And maybe we can't know, but I wish we knew a little bit more about the lanes and the sidewalk easement, because if it came down to like, we just need 2 feet. We can do some in the public right of way, and then, you know, but if we had another 2 feet, we'd accommodate the bike lane or whatever. Is there a way to sort this before we're done here, or?
Well, you're going to impact their entire site plan.
No, well, yeah, which you don't want to do, but I didn't know whether it was.
I don't think it's been discussed that far as development and what's going
I didn't know whether there
Well,
was
and
any.
I just think to
leeway in
Jen's
that.
point is that there's not really anything in the code that we could mandate that at this,
No, it
that the
would be a
planning board
request.
would, so, and I think,
I
yeah.
just, what I was saying is I don't have any feel for what kind of size of request it would be. So right now, like, are the planners right up against the public right of way, that kind of thing, where everything is built out? to
Well,
the-
I will
site
say
plan?
that this site plan, actually, as is proposed, does give back some space, right? There was parking that is existing now that was actually over the property boundary and in the right-of-way, and that's been cleaned up in these site plans, right, correct? Applicant, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those have been pulled back, so now, at least on the Fishkill Avenue side, everything is within the property, so
Well, that's
we've
good,
gained
but
back
that's
rightful
kind of how it should
right-of-way.
be, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, in that sense, in terms of what you see now when you're walking down the street, you're not walking on that side, but when you're walking on the other side of the street and you're walking down Fishkill, what you're seeing now, you're even gaining some space from there, because those are being pulled back.
So it is somewhat in effect, ultimately, the effect of, though it's not physical sidewalk, there's a strip there that's not being used for parking where it once was.
Correct.
And that it is a buffer between active traffic and the property line, right? So-
Once this is restriped, you will gain
Exactly.
buffer space
Yeah.
between active traffic and this property line, where in the future, amenities could go,
Yep.
like
Okay,
sidewalks.
So there is some leeway in the site plan as it exists.
We
Like
gain
where if
some,
somebody
we
said-
gain, yeah.
Yeah, there's room in the right-of-way right now, based upon the plans where the white line exists on Fishkill Avenue to their property line. It's about 15 feet,
That we,
So-
yeah.
based upon the plans that were submitted. So that gives you room for a shoulder, a buffer area, 5-foot wide sidewalk,
Without asking for any changes.
without
in the
asking
land.
for any changes there.
So, but you're not going to see much of a material difference except for no stripes in that buffer zone
Right,
anymore,
until-
right?
Right, until the committee decides to do something
And
and
the
the
city
city wants
decides
to
to
do
build
something.
something, right?
So if we were to approve this as is, we would not be like kind of cutting our nose off in the face. We wouldn't be
No.
inadvertently, creating a situation where it's like, oh man, if we only had one more foot, we could have done.
But you don't
X."
even know, like you said, you don't even know what you're asking for.
I know.
Well,
But
you've got
to
what would be considered an appropriate amount of width, the full street, for, at a minimum, sidewalks on both sides and adequate traffic lanes, right? And there may also be additional available, if I'm hearing 15 feet on one side, for other amenities, right?
Buffer spaces,
So-
so that you're not walking a foot from
Right.
active traffic. Creates a
Tree
very different
lines,
experience
bike
when you're on
lanes.
the,
I mean, the
yeah.
other thing we have to take into account with that is utilities. We
Sure.
can't do
Excuse me.
plantings over top of utilities, we have to take a look at,
Always the engineers got to come in and mess everything up, right?
Well-
Right, Dan?
architects
So-
always out of sight, out of mind.
So reasonably, to the best degree that we can reasonably tell right now, we are not in a situation where we're kind of like,
I think what is within the power of,
unnecessarily constraining some future.
No.
in terms of what is within the power of the board, I think you've done what you could to make sure that this improvements, the improvements of this site are not overflowing into what is rightfully the public right-of-way. And then, in terms of implementing planters, curb and concrete curb stops, things like that, to act in some way as a curb or a buffer between this site. So I think, I would say this board has done what they could under the existing regulations of the code to create division between this and the roadway.
Thank you. Great. So with that, we'll go to the public. We still are in open public comment. So anyone here who would like to share their thoughts, please do. You know you want to, Teresa. There wouldn't be a planning board meeting without it.
Teresa Kraft. I believe Route 52, known to most as Fishkill Avenue, is a New York State road and not 100% onto the preview of the city of Beacon. Tonight's agenda packet states the 9-car carrier will generally access the project, pulling in and out smoother, but offer no guarantees that independent drivers won't overshoot the location and enter into more cumbersome access, or the GPS takes them around the city. I still anticipate these carriers will be driving in tighter residential neighborhoods on a continuous basis, and I also believe that they don't own this property. So this is something that's going to continue down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just mention the resolution does require, as was discussed at one of the last meetings, requires the applicant to direct the car haulers to not use residential streets. So even if they do miss the turn or whatever, they're going to have to find a different way to come back not using residential streets.
Yes.
And Carvana's agreed to that, and Jennifer can address that as well. They will be instructing all the delivery drivers to avoid those identified residential roads.
That's good, because it's in the resolution. Great. Anyone else? Last chance before we consider a motion to close the public hearing. Thoughts, discussion, or otherwise a motion? Don't all jump at once.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Second.
Second?
Second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
And then we do have the opportunity to discuss adopting the resolution we have in draft form. Any substantive comment or discussion or questions for either the applicant or Jennifer at the moment? Great. I'll accept a motion to adopt.
Motion?
Motion by Kevin,
Seconded.
second by Len. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so
Have a
much.
nice evening. That takes us to second item on our agenda, which is, this thing cooperates. Forgive me. Here we go. We are looking at 39 Howland Avenue. This thing has decided to stop working. Here we go. Public hearing and continued review of application for subdivision approval, residential, 39 Howland Avenue, submitted by John Vergara. Is the applicant with us? Is that you?
Sir, I'm just
It is you.
shuffling papers over here.
Chop, chop.
Good evening. For the public, I'll just give a brief introduction on the project. We have a two-lot subdivision off of Howland Avenue. The property is on the west side of Howland Avenue, located at number 39. There's an existing house in the south east corner of that property, and we are proposing a new driveway, house down to the rear, generally configuration such as this. We have a sewer connection that's going to go back up to Howland Avenue. We have a water service connection that comes in, and we've provided a number of arborvitae and other, well, just, I believe just arborvitae now that I think about it, I'm sorry, in several areas of the site to help kind of soften some of that feel along Howland Avenue, between the property to the north, and then between the new house and the existing house.
Great. Thank you. We do need to open public hearing, so, sorry, we gotta do secret neg deck.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have the draft secret neg deck that we've reviewed, and so with that, any further input, questions, or comments on the negative declaration? Otherwise, I'll accept the motion.
And it does provide your reasoned elaboration for
Thank
your negative declaration.
I like the air quotes. It's solid reason. It is. I'll accept the motion to adopt the negative declaration.
Motion to
Motion.
adopt negative declaration.
Thank you. Motion by Len.
Second?
Second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
And then I'll accept the motion to open the public hearing.
Motion.
Motion by David.
Seconded.
Second by Len. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So with that, quickly, we'll just take a few minutes to run through engineering and planning comments. Let's start with you, Mr. Russo.
So I had a few minor comments. Two, with regards to the subdivision plat, still needs to be signed and sealed, and the word preliminary needs to be removed from it. With regards to the plan set, I'd like note number 10 to be expanded, which discusses the sump pump that they'll need for the basement, and to note that it's expressly prohibited to have that sump pump connect to the sanitary sewer lateral. Also, the plans that we have show a branching of the water service before it enters the house. I spoke to Dan about this. He was going to clean that up. Should only be a single line entering the house through a meter.
Great, thank you. Questions by the applicant at all, or your?
Yeah, no, after I spoke with you about it, I looked at the plan. I'm just wondering if maybe it was a contour or a leader that might have made it look confusing. So we'll just try to make sure that that's very clear on the water service.
Great, thanks. Anything?
I have no outstanding questions or recommendations. I think my last remaining one was a comment. I think the board has been, over the past few meetings, trying to balance the need for more housing in the city of Beacon and the ability to subdivide this lot, and kind of it does meet the requirements of the code. We've been trying to balance that with ensuring that this new lot and the new home fits in with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. So I think just pointing out what the applicant has tried to do with, there is significant grade change on this site. There is the existing structure on Lot 1, so working within those parameters, I think what they have done is shifted the house more towards the kind of the driveway so that you can look down the driveway and see the house. To the recommendation of the board from the last meeting, that the structure's been rotated so that it matches kind of all the other existing houses on this street that are slightly rotated and not exactly perpendicular or parallel with the roadway. And then there's also been kind of the screening that they talked about in terms of trying to buffer this from the adjacent houses. So I think from a planning perspective, where you would ideally like to have the house sat up at the street frontage to match the existing homes, I think with the constraints of this site, there has been measures taken to do what can be done to try and get this house kind of in line with the adjacent lots. So I didn't have any remaining comments. I just wanted to kind of point at that, and if the board was satisfied with the measures that had been taken, then I had no further comments.
Thank you. So Dan, is that at the same angle that that existing house is, or is it just sort of random?
It was lined up more like Howland as far as we were trying to do. But when we came in, we also were providing a little bit more of an angle to get it away so that if you look down the driveway as you're passing, you're really not going to see much of the house at all. So we kind of continued that driveway with the bend, and that made that front probably a little, it's more in the general orientation of Howland, but it's probably not exactly the same as the existing house.
Better than it's sort of, I guess it was, it was rectilinear to the east property line, right?
Yeah, it was more perpendicular to the driveway.
Yeah.
Previously, and closer to that property line.
Thank you. So, board, any other questions or comments?
Actually, I think it's an okay, probably the best solution to this that you could come up with. I think it's not an ideal site. It's not so bad.
Great.
I have a question about the sewer. You said that the sewer wouldn't be hooked up to the waistline. Is it going to be a septic, or?
No, the sewer's going to be hooked up, the sump pump. So in there, since they're having a basement, they have to have footing drains. Right. You can't have the footing drains pumped into the sanitary sewer.
Okay.
Great.
I agree that it's about the best you could do with that, trying to look at it in terms of what happens, 20 years from now when completely different people own these houses. Has this created a not great situation, but it seems like it's about the best. The new house isn't, looking right into the backyard of the existing house. There's a little bit more of a, like I said, the orientation is more consistent with the other houses on the street. Seems like it's about the best you can do. And imagining some future owners that come into this situation as it's planned out here, it doesn't seem like there's a situation being created that's going to be intolerable for those folks. So
Great. Anything else before we go to the public? Board. Great. Anyone here from the public who would like to share their thoughts or comments for the record?
Good evening. I'm Andrew Johnson. I'm at 25 Howland Ave, so I'm one of the adjoining properties. Just a couple quick things I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, but one is just, when we saw this is kind of coming into the neighborhood, it just seems like we're jamming a house into like 8 people's backyards. Apologies, into like 8 people's backyards that are all adjacent to this property. So it was kind of a shock to see that this subdivision was being kind of presented. Just as we were speaking about the reorientation of the house, looking at kind of that shift in the original plan, it's not now in line with the house in front of it. It's facing the direct back porch of the house next to it. And then my property is adjacent to that, which is also literally facing directly now onto our back porches. So it's kind of shifting from one facing property to the others in terms of that facement there. My other big thing just looking at this is that that's the only open space. Those two properties that do have those double lots that go back in that area. And when it comes to rainfall and just the weather up there, it seems to be the area that absorbs the water. So I would just be concerned about adding that much impervious surface into that area and what it does to all their surrounding houses as far as drainage goes. Just wanted to bring those things up, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I agree. I certainly wouldn't want that in my backyard. Understanding the applicant has adjusted the orientation of the proposed building, rotating it counterclockwise to mimic the neighborhood, I'm not sure how the other neighbors feel, and I'm glad I heard that. 8 other families will be impacted by this, and that will affect their quality of life. This new home with all the lights, bells, and whistles will be in their backyard. Even though the subdivision as proposed is code compliant, does not make it conform to reality. Every parcel does not need to be crammed with housing. If you grant approval of this subdivision as proposed, I believe you will open Pandora's box citywide. Please don't.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Tim Kelleher, 14 Laurel Street. I didn't see anything of the driveway going to that area. Them houses seem quite close. I don't know if they have to have a variance on either side. I don't see how that can fit in between the two houses. And in that area, there's underground streams, quite a few. Them houses been flooded out in the whole area. I don't know if that's been looked into, if anybody cares. And the other thing is, I don't mean to seem Mr. Negative, but there's too many houses that are going in that don't conform to the houses in the area. I know there's a lot of money to be made, and a lot of people are making it, but there's still no consideration to the other houses in a lot of these areas. Not just this, but all around. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are we aware of any natural springs in the area there?
I am not.
No? Would they appear on maps?
I don't know if they would or would not, honestly. I know there is some areas of streams further up the road. I was never made aware of anything in this area.
Anyone else? Great. With that, we could, as a board, if we so choose, and certainly feel free to discuss, move to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing. A motion? Motion to
Motion by
close the
Kevin.
public hearing, sorry.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Donna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And again, we do have the ability to direct Jen's office to draft a resolution for adoption for next month. Any discussion or questions on that matter? Otherwise, I'll accept the motion to do just that. Do I have a motion?
What's the motion for again?
To direct Jen's office to draft
Draft
a
a
resolution.
resolution, motion to. draft a
Motion by Len?
resolution.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you. Somehow I've lost access to my agenda, so.
I'm going to recuse myself.
You're recusing? Thank you. Donna's recusing. There are 4 of us, so we are a simple quorum. Next item on the agenda is continued review of application for site plan and subdivision approval, mixed-use commercial and residential, 45 Beacon Street, High Street and High Street.
Good evening.
Hi.
I left you
Welcome
an agenda
back.
right there. Good evening.
thank you.
My name is
Got
Allison
2 computers
Fowles.
and neither of them are working.
But I have it saved on your phone. Good evening, my name is Allison Fausner. I'm an associate attorney with the law firm Cuddy and Fader, appearing on behalf of the applicants Beekman Arts Center LLC and Bay Ridge Studios LLC. I'm appearing in connection with the board's continued review of the applicant's site plan and subdivision or lot merger applications, proposing to develop 2 mixed-use buildings on 45 Beekman and High Street. We have a small team before you tonight. It's just myself and our project architect, so it's similar to last month's meeting. It was a very small submission package for you. We're still working on a lot of the deliverables for the alternative right-of-way design, and we're still working on the New York State DOT package. So we're formalizing a few of those components with our title company as well as our surveyor. As soon as we submit that formal application to DOT, we'll provide copies to the city, as well as provide you with updates as we hear back from them. We also hope to have a comprehensive package for you to discuss at your next meeting. In the interim, I will turn it over to REA just to briefly touch on the floor plans that he submitted and the cross-section that was requested.
Thank you.
Good evening. So I just have the site plan up here. So just to reference that with the revised layout of that building along Beekman Street, we're closer to the sidewalk, and then that one leg of it got larger over there. The building near High Street got smaller, but we still have the same number of apartments in there. So we submitted revised plans. The main revision was that there's a covered arcade at the larger building, and because we're closer to the sidewalk, that gives more of a sense of not, pressing right up against the sidewalk with the building. And it also gives us an opportunity to, as Len was saying, we can refer to, that can be detailed to refer to historical, references around that area. We also submitted a site section, so you can get an idea of how the parking lot level relates to the building and that arcade and the street level. So we're basically down 1 story at the parking lot level.
Where's that section taken?
It's basically through. It's through the middle of the longer leg of the building and down through the site and back into the retaining area.
So don't you have at least where you start, where you showed that section cut, don't you, toward the rear of the site, start to see a gradual incline. And then as you go, like if you were to sort of take a cut, for example, more toward High Street,
Right.
you have a pretty significant change in grade between the rear of your site and High Street.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we can take a couple of other cuts so you can see it, through other areas if that
Yeah.
helps. But I know that we were talking about how the lower level related to what you see of the garage over there.
Yeah,
and
it's
how that
useful.
relates to the street.
This is
Yeah.
definitely useful to see the relationship of the building to Beekman,
Right.
and how that interplay is going to happen. But also, more, I think, for the ability to understand what the view down from High Street, especially the residences up on High Street, onto the top of this thing.
Okay. Yeah, no, we can do a couple more of these.
Yeah,
cut
and I
through
would
other
almost go
areas.
so far as to say it would be very helpful, short of going up there and crawling through people's backyards or looking out their windows, to start to understand views,
Yeah.
three-dimensional views, from some of those vantage points of what you're seeing. Because ultimately, you're seeing roofs
Yeah.
at certain angles, right, of your new building.
If you're
You're up
in
on
the
High
building,
Street.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you
I mean,
may-
also, we can show some renderings that would clarify
Yeah,
that.
I think it would be very helpful.
Yeah.
So you also may want to have him take into account any mechanicals he's going to have on the
That's exactly my
rooftop.
point. That's where I was leading to.
Oh, yeah, no, that will be covered.
Yeah, and I mean, even more importantly, I mean, a lot of the past applications with rooftop mechanical equipment, you don't just see them from straight on,
Yeah.
where they do need some visual screening.
Right.
You see them from other elevations elsewhere,
Yeah.
elsewhere within Beacon, and this is one that's particularly acute. You
Yeah.
know you're going to see the roof and any other, appurtenances and mechanical equipment on the
Yeah.
top of this building from some residential parcels up on High Street.
Right. Yeah, and we'll make sure to screen those and try to integrate that with the building design, not just, put a fence around it.
Yep.
Right, but I'm thinking when we see the cross-sections, we want to see those as part of those cross-sections.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yep.
And be able to see them as the
Yeah,
visual
I mean, I can
renderings.
show something generic, because we're not that far with any kind of engineering, but
As we go.
can show it, yeah.
As we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then also, we're working on the building design, and we'll have that for you next month. And we are, as you mentioned, we're looking at that garage elevation from below being integrated into the building design, so you're not just looking at a blank wall there.
Okay.
And, yeah, so that's basically where we are.
Cool. So in progress.
Yep.
Yep. Any thoughts based on your review at the moment that you want to at least bring to our attention? I know we're already to the applicant's attention, but yeah.
If we could zoom into the arcade, I mean, that's mostly that's the change, if we could zoom in on this drawing to the arcade, kind of Beekman, and the newest kind of treatment, I think, just so everyone can kind of, public and everyone can see that. I mean, I think that's the thing that I commented on mostly. So what it is there'll be an overhang of stories 2, 3, well, 4 is set back, but 2 and 3 will be overhanging. You're kind of creating like a extended walking space on the private property, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And
So-
that would be treated more like, exterior space, but finished with the building.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess my main comment on that is, I think the project continues, I think to Jen's earlier training, right, thinking about the comprehensive plan and the intent of the linkage district. I think the changes that we've seen last time and this time, moving the building closer to the street, now creating this interesting kind of interaction between the building and the sidewalk and the streetscape, continues to get closer and closer to the intent of the code and the linkage district specifically. But I think to the points earlier in terms of the renderings and I think streetscape profiles are going to become really important with this project as the architecture is developed. I think the concept is right, but it's really going to come down to the details of how this interacts with the street. So I think that's my general comment. I think it's moving in the right direction, but I think there's a lot of detail that we'll kind of need to see as the project develops to ensure that it's meeting the intent, very specific and unique intent of the linkage district about how this building engages with the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And I had a question for you. I mean, you may not be able to answer now, but just something to think about. The code allows for solar collectors to be projected above the roof. And so I'm looking at creating sort of like a tower at the corner, using a solar collector with a roof shape though.
Yeah, I think, so it does, you're right, that solar collectors are allowed to be. I apologize. So solar collectors are allowed to be above the height, the permitted height of the district. I'd have to look at that section of the code in terms of like setbacks and aspects like that, but
that's the one where it says that solar collectors and roof gardens
are exempt from the total coverage
and the setback
requirement. Yeah, so I think, I mean, we'd still be looking at kind of visibility. I mean, I think green infrastructure and green building practices are encouraged within the code. So that seems to align with that. I'd want to see it on the drawings to kind of anticipate, but, I think that type of improvement for buildings is supportable by the code.
Okay. It's going to look like a roof because it would be, solar roof tiles.
Yeah, I think once we see it on the plans, we can review it for code compliance and any comments of the board.
Okay.
Yeah. Just one observation as I'm looking at this relative to the arcade. You may want to, think, and I'm sure there's further development that you're thinking of as well, but just what that, because it's a pretty long sort of cut in the building at the sidewalk level, what that feels like from the experience level.
Right. Also, I am looking at changing that a little bit. So there's a lot of cutout, but not along the entire length.
Okay,
So,
I understand. Yeah, it's just like right there, it's just the proportions of that person standing in that little niche.
Yeah.
And thinking about how that's cast potentially along the entire frontage just feels disproportionate.
Yeah, when I was getting further into it, I noticed that as well.
Yeah, cool. All right. You may.
Natalie, one of the comments in your comment letters requesting a LWRP consistency statement, we did note that in our cover letter we did provide a consistency statement last November to the board. Do you want us to re-include that in our submission?
No, I think once the project it's changing a bit, right? So I think that's just noting it in terms of once we land on wherever you're going with the project. I don't know. I can look at that if you want me to review it in detail for updates, but
Yeah,
I think
a lot of the parts are going to stay consistent, erosion and sediment control measures, but I can take another look at it and send over my notes.
I'd have to look back at my letter. I don't know if I saw that in the submission, so.
I think John Clark reviewed it, so.
Oh, okay.
He signed off on it, but we'll take a look at it. And
Yeah, I mean, I would, so it might be helpful once you get to something that you're landing on to give us like a complete package again.
Okay,
Yeah.
will do.
John?
I have no comments at this time.
Wow.
It's all
How
architecture.
rare is that? I know, still early. Great. Board, any questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions?
John, I think you were very polite about that building section.
It's still early, so
I know.
I don't want to too deep.
I don't want to over-respond. But I think it's critical, and I think it's something that we won't be able to really make a judgment about it until both as a designer, you understand what's happening there, right? And also that you allow us to understand what's happening and show that you're responding to the different things, the aspects of the site that are critical and unique. The other thing I wanted to just suggest to you when you start dealing with the streetscape, the arcade and these other ideas, it's a specific location with specific traffic impact. It's not the same as being on Main Street where there's slow traffic. And there's a lot of open area with a lot of cars in it that the building is facing. So that's unique. And also all that area is looking at that building. The one thing I thought that perhaps if you created a buffer zone of trees, that it might create that space next to the building, that intermediate space, like a porch that was half in and half out, wasn't completely exposed to the noise and speed of the vehicles nearby, right? That it'd be better for it'd be a better retail location, and it would be more of an attractor for the kind of pedestrian activity that you want to encourage on that spine coming up West Main.
Yeah, well said. I think, yeah, landscape is going to be pretty important, especially on the entire site, but especially that softening capability along the street line. Well said, Kevin. Anything else?
I will be just interested in seeing how the design of the two buildings kind of complement each other.
Yeah.
And if you are thinking about, I don't know if I heard you correctly now, you're thinking about maybe a tower with that solar roof on top of it. Just when you come in with that elevations and stuff, I would like to get a kind of statement of what you're looking to evoke with that, what you want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, what else can we do for you this evening?
I think that's it.
Good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next month.
Not getting rid of me.
Great. So next agenda item, review of application of site plan approval, rooftop deck, 47 East Main Street, submitted by East Main LLC, Beacon LLC.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm back.
that was easy. This is the first look at this particular application, so
Yeah, so
Take it away.
this introduction for the board. So the property is at 47 East Main Street. It's Cooper's Restaurant now. It used to be Dogwood. And the applicant wants to add a small roof deck on top of the building for outdoor dining. So it's about, you can see it here on the right. It's about 600 square feet of deck and then the bulkhead for the stair. And so there was always a sort of concern about lack of outdoor space at Dogwood. They never pursued it, but they also, realized that it was a bar and they had music. Cooper's is more of a quiet restaurant compared to the previous bar use. And the applicant wants to, talk about how to do this in a way that minimizes the impact on the neighbors. We're going to have a shadow box fence minimally around the deck that would help screen it visually and acoustically. There'd be no outdoor music on the deck. We are also going to screen the HVAC equipment.
it's going to always be a theme, REA.
Yeah.
I keep coming up.
Yeah, also, I know that the applicant reached out to you to talk about that. His understanding was that the rooftop equipment is more modern and lighter than what was there before, but he understands that he should have had a permit for that.
Yeah, so I didn't cite him yet for that violation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if I did, you would be here this evening.
Yeah.
The rooftop units were replaced without a building permit, which is required by state code. But yeah, I understand that, but still, you're going to have to demonstrate as well, not only the loading of the new rooftop units, but also the live load and dead load of materials going onto the roof.
Right.
So this is now going to become a place of public assembly, and it's not going to be just your typical, roof that has to carry a 30 or 40 pound snow load.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would happen at the permit phase, assuming that.
At that phase, well, he's got to take care of the rooftop units before the next meeting.
Okay.
That's, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll go on the record now with that one.
Got it.
Thank you.
Oops. Okay. I'm like airing your dirty laundry.
But whatever's up there will be screened as part of this, and the screening will relate somehow to.
Screened from view from who? The diners on the roof or neighboring
They would
properties?
be screened by the shadow box fence around the deck, but the units are visible from various places.
I see.
You get two homes across the street.
Yeah, you're surrounded by residential, so I think, at least very similar type applications in the past, commercial, especially restaurant, outdoor, adjacent to residential. you know what the concerns are. They're going to be noise, not just music, but, you know,
Yeah, conversation.
hours,
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, he's also willing to limit the hours of the rooftop use, you know.
Yeah.
He understands that there's impact, and he wants to minimize that and work with the board to do that.
Yeah, and all of those, I think, you know, you know this well too, the best approach is to come to us with what, you know, you know those parameters and restrictions will be based on experience. We'll review them, maybe tweak them a little bit, but yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a parking requirement here. I'm just curious to understand how that is being addressed.
Yeah, he has an agreement with the firehouse to use part of that lot. I believe he has 24 spaces there. There's more than he needs for the current parking. And he would provide a copy of that to the city for review to make sure the agreement is correct.
So this would increase the parking requirement, right?
Theoretically, it slightly increases it, but with the new, you know, with the latest parking for the CMS district, he has more than he needs.
Oh, okay, I understand. So we just need to obviously prove that out.
Yeah, and he'll get something that Jen can review.
Okay. Anything else?
I mean, assuming he takes care of the equipment situation with the building department.
Sounds like he's got exactly 30 days.
Yeah. Can we move it along with scheduling a public hearing yet, or?
I think there's a lot more to be presented on this. I mean, lighting should be looked at also.
Is this all you got?
Did you see this?
I think there's a
The renderings are really not showing the impact of this from Water Street.
Yeah.
Right, that was one of my comments, was to see some additional renderings from various viewpoints.
Yeah, and we would show, you know, more sort of like photorealistic.
I would prefer to have more, if that is the intent, and obviously you're hearing from the board and others that we're going to need more.
Yeah.
Since you're going to be providing more, I'd rather give the public the opportunity to see that next month, if that's when you plan to get this stuff to us, and then schedule public hearing for the following.
Okay.
So there's enough time so that we're not rushing this, and that we have the time to respond as well as the public.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there any other steps that?
Yeah, I think Natalie's memo references the potential for at least 1 or 2 variances, so.
Is it variance?
Well, it has to have a variance.
For the rooftop accessory structures. So I think we need to discuss that, and there might need to be a referral to the zoning board before we have our public hearing. The other thing too, as Bruce mentioned with the violations, those would need to be cleared up before we can move forward.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, under our code.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm kind of concerned about the noisy impact from this, frankly. I mean, this is, I live not too far away from here, but the shifting to having this up, to having people up on the roof, is there any way we can, I mean, frankly, is there any way we can do some kind of a study and see what the impact is going to be on areas in the neighborhood, or are we making this too complicated?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have in the past, I can think of 3 specific applications. Nelsinga, the Yard, Prophecy, where we've talked in great deal about noise, sound transmission, gotten real deep technical in terms of consultants, yeah.
Yes.
9 p.m.
Time. Yeah.
Well, you know, yeah, there's the hours of operation, but there's also, you know, an understanding from, as best empirically, an ability with, you know, decibel levels and experts describing what that means in terms of transmission and audibility at certain distances. So, yeah, so to answer your question, we could. I think we, you we may want to, we usually request that the applicant develop studies to that effect, so I see you nodding your head. Something the applicant, you may want to
Yeah,
talk to the owner
I'll
about.
talk to him about that.
Yeah, I think, and specifically, obviously, if you're not transmitting, music, or if you're not doing acoustic music, it's really around voice,
Yeah.
audible, vocal. And then, yeah, I mean, really understanding what times the applicant is willing to cut off and restrict
Yeah.
access up there, and therefore the ability for noise to be generated.
Right, I think
is
that would probably be
important.
tied into the code that deals with that.
Yeah, of course, again, yes, there's always a code, there's a noise ordinance, and
Yeah.
anybody, no matter who you are, where you are, if you violate that, you're gonna get, I don't know, does Bruce show up at your house?
Yeah.
Does Bruce write tickets for that, or is it the cop? Anyway, yes, everybody's subject to the noise ordinance.
Right, and so that would be the starting point, and then if there's further
Yeah.
accommodation.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Well, just to say, I'm not having a really visceral reaction, to the design of that bulkhead. Like, just looking at that elevation, I don't think the fencing and the bulkhead is doing much for the building. I mean, it's a kind of, there's a simple kind of parapet, ornament there. It's a long, low building, and then it's getting this appendage on top of it that's kind of blocky. And I don't know if anyone considered trying to do something to integrate this a little bit more with the facade, or I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea was just to try to simplify it, and the fact that it's set back from the parapet, you're really not going to see a lot of it from street level.
Yeah, that's almost
Yep.
deceiving, because
Right.
Yeah,
your
and-
eye sort of reads it as if it's right up against the parapet.
Right, and that's why I think the renderings would be more useful.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, because it's not, the backside of that building, it is significantly taller, which you're not getting from that angle, but also you've got a common wall backing up to, you've got a common wall with the adjacent building there, so frankly, it's kind of hard to see this to see how this is actually going to look in context without at least a piece of that building in there.
Yeah, no,
Forgive me,
we'll fill that information.
Yeah, he's building the stair bulkhead too.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Does that stair exist at all?
No.
Okay.
I think we need to get back to Natalie's comments as far as variances that may be required.
I think we do too. Thank you for bringing us back on track, Mr. Russo, from Mike and Tully.
John's trying to go home. Yeah, so, the second comment on my letter was with regards to roof accessory structure setbacks, and we kind of touched on this with the last project, but there is a requirement within the CMS district that such projections or kind of accessory roof structures, which I think we could deem the entire kind of roof space and the bulkhead, right, should not be taking up more than 20% of the roof area, and must be set back at least 15 feet from the edge of the roof along any street frontage. So I didn't necessarily see if there was a measurement provided so it looks like it may be set back 15 feet from East Main Street, but not on the backside on Water Street. As we can see from the drawings, it looks like it's right up against that. So it looks like it doesn't comply with that setback requirement from the street. So I believe a variance would be required for that. And, the roof deck and the bulkhead together is around 679 square feet, by looking at the measurements, I believe, which is kind of 37% of the roof area. So again, that's over the 20%. So I don't know. Maybe it would be helpful if we could see what a potential table layout would be on this space, and whether that could be shrunk to kind of pull it away and reduce those variances, potentially eliminate the percentage one. Again, I think those are things that would have to be brought before the CBA, but I think just from this board and hearing about noise and visibility, can you still provide a viable outdoor space but have it kind of shrunk? And I think maybe the layout, showing us the layout of tables and seating would be helpful for that. continue on with my comments, I think to the other point that Len was making, there is discussion of projection screening materials, and I think what the code says is that they shall be enclosed with walls as they are proposed, and the material and design of such walls shall be in harmony with the main walls of the building on which they are located. So I think for that, both the renderings you're speaking of as well as the color elevations for these materials, I think it's called out, but it would be helpful to see that, I think, to start discussing those materials and their compatibility with the existing structure and structures adjacent to this. It wasn't clear if there was lighting proposed in the exterior. I assume if they're going to be going into evening hours, there is lighting, so I just didn't see what the proposed lighting was. So when that's on there, we can kind of review and compare that to that section of the code. And then I think to the parking requirement, so using the current CMS district standards, the existing space using the current standards would require 3.7 parking spaces because it's 2 parking spaces per every 1,000 square feet of floor area, right? So the existing building requires 3.7. The addition of this 555 square foot roof deck would add 1.1 spaces, which is a 30% increase, right? I think the board does have the ability in this district, because the lot is less than 8,000 square feet, the board does have the ability to, and where on-site parking is infeasible, the planning board may waive all parking requirements, provided that the total floor area of the building is no greater than 5,000 square feet. So that is an option for this board as well, and I think it would be helpful to know whether that's accommodated off-site, but I think regardless of that point, the board does have the ability to waive that. And that was specifically created for the CMS district because you have buildings like this that have been built already to take up the full lot.
Yeah. I mean, practically, he wants to have that parking situation continue.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's, right, I don't think it's relevant here, right? Because he has the agreement, he has the available parking to include the additional requirements, so.
And this board would really be looking at that one additional space, right? What's under review is just the 555 square foot. So we're talking about the one parking space.
Yeah, so, exactly. So he's able to prove that he can provide it. That's great. Somewhat moot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But just one question. This area was in, what, GB, I think, zoning district until 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if that, if you remember, CMS kind of got expanded out to the ends. What would, I'm trying to figure out what the restriction would have been in GB on building a roof deck. Or what the,
the only thing,
there's a 15% restriction on stuff on top of buildings just in the general zoning code, which the CMS regs don't apply to. Is there anything aside from that? Just a question.
besides in the CMS, that 15% gets raised to 20%,
If
right?
it wasn't in CMS, what would the restrictions be saying about building this roof deck?
Yeah, it would be that 15% if it was outside of this district, right? That your roof decks are never mentioned specifically. It's, you have to kind of associate it with roof accessory structures where they talk about roof gardens and things like that. So outside of the CMS, again, limited to 15 feet in height, any structure on the roof with some exceptions, and then limited to 15% of the total roof area, where that is increased slightly within the CMS district to 20%.
Okay.
So would this be considered more in like the roof gardening category, or, I mean, it's not a building except for the bulkhead, but.
I was interpreting it as structure specifically because of the fencing. Fencing is referenced in accessory roof structure. So I think looking at that and having that being surrounding the space, which would not necessarily be required for a roof garden. I can dig deeper into definitions of the code, but
No,
I did not see this falling within that exception of a roof garden.
Okay.
Cool. Sorry, did I already ask you if you had anything?
Really have nothing else to add. I mean, they have to do an inflow and infiltration study. They've submitted an application to the building department for that. I already mentioned additional renderings.
Yep, great.
Okay.
See you next
All
month.
set. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that completes our regular agenda. We'll move to miscellaneous business, but only after a short 1-minute break. All right. We're back in business. So, next on the agenda in miscellaneous business, and before we get to architectural review, we have a couple of extensions to consider. We have a request for one 90-day extension of site plan and subdivision approval for the 37 units at Beacon Views Townhouses. I think you made a recommendation that we consider two
That would
90-day
be
extensions?
my recommendation, yes.
Yeah.
I just, unless there's been a new development that I'm not aware of, I can't imagine. this is
To
gonna
save you the effort of
be
coming
ready.
back after 90 days, should you
Sure.
need it, would you like two?
Yes, yes, I was going to mention that. Let's request that.
Okay.
I'm Sarah Richardson, by the way, from Insight Engineering, Surveying and Landscape Architecture. And if you'd like a quick update of where we are, we have secured our Army Corps permit, and we're working on our other conditions of approval.
Great. Well, best of luck. So, I have a motion to grant two 90-day extensions of site plan and subdivision approval.
Motion to grant 2 90-day extensions.
Motion by Len,
Second.
second by Kevin. All in favor, unless you had, sorry. We're in our extension discussion.
2 90 days for Beacon Views.
Any thoughts on the matter? We have a motion and a second, and right before you sat down, we were about to vote.
That's fine.
Sorry about that. So, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. What did you miss? Next on the agenda is to consider a request for 2 6-month, I don't know why this isn't just a year, extensions.
For special permits, the code says.
The
grant
increments of 6 months? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's why. Do you want 4? We're just doubling everything tonight.
If you'll give it. It's a very non-controversial application. Did someone say noise earlier?
Unless you absolutely need it. This is for the hotel and accessory conference event space and cafe at 1113 Walcott, submitted by Prophecy Theater. Status updates? Anything you want to share?
Sure. So the project architect and engineer have been working on responding to the final comments. We've also submitted and received Jennifer's approval as to form for the stormwater agreement. So we're just going to need to record that to finalize that condition of approval. Other than that, a lot of time has been spent with securing a hotel operator. We shouted them out in our letter. I understand that they're a great operator that has a lot of places up in the Catskills. So if you want to check them out, I definitely encourage you to, or Taylor has told me to encourage you to. So we're going to be spending the next couple months working with them and getting those construction drawings together so we can submit for a building permit application.
Sorry, what's the name of the operator?
It is, Foster Supply Hospitality.
If Taylor said check them out, I think I'm gonna. Okay, so, anything else?
Nope, that's about it.
Motion to grant 2 6-month extensions for extensions of the special use permit approval. Motion.
Motion to grant a 2-month extension of the special permit approval?
Motion by Kevin.
Wait, how do I do this?
2
6 months.
2 6-month? I thought I said that, I'm sorry.
No, you said the 2-month extension.
Oh, jeez.
That's what I just know it's on the record, right? So
I
you
should
got
leave
it.
it to you.
It's almost Kevin's bedtime, I understand. So, we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor? Aye.
Did we get a second?
Who seconded?
No, we didn't, that's why I
Oh,
missed.
okay.
We got the motion
Okay, it's
itself.
past my bedtime.
The motion is correctly worded. I will second the motion to grant 2 6-month duration extensions.
Thank you.
And then.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Are you the next one too?
Yes, I will leave you alone after that.
Good, because
You're messing us up.
nothing else on the agenda. This is to consider a request for one-year extension, one-year extension of site plan approval. This is for the 3-story commercial project at 536 Main Street.
Status update?
Yes, please.
We secured the city planner and city engineer's sign-off on the plans tonight. Dan Kohler delivered the final site plan, so if you'd be so kind to sign off on them, we could move forward with that. An odd twist with the resolution is that it's conditioned on commencing construction, not just submission of a bona fide building permit application. So we're submitting this extension request in abundance of caution.
Is that whole stack?
6 copies.
Yes. Yep. Thank you. Motion, I'll make the motion. Motion by John.
Seconded.
Second by Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I
Okay.
promise you will have your regularly scheduled Mr. Palmer next month.
Yeah, you can stay.
Who
Tell
made the
him-
last motion? Who made the motion?
I made the
John.
motion.
John.
Seconded it.
Yeah.
You threw Mercedes off.
I know, it kind of threw you off there a little bit, right? Try to keep us all awake. Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah, I just get. Here? Move down here.
Thank you. Good night. Thanks, Jenny. Good night.
Good night, drive safe, home safe, Jennifer, thank you. I love how they all just run away so quickly. So now we have architectural review. First on the agenda is certificate of appropriateness for a sign at 146 Main Street.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Hi, if you could speak into the mic.
Hi.
Thank you.
I'm applying for a sign for my store at 146 Main Street.
Okay, great. Application material, sorry. So you're hanging this as a blade sign?
Yes.
Perpendicular to the building?
Yes.
Is there an existing fixture?
No.
To hang it from? Can you tell us anything about what the actual hardware is going to look like?
It'll be a iron or metal post.
Are you procuring the bracket from the same
Yes,
people
it's a
that are
kit
making the
that-
sign, comes together as a kit?
Yes.
And so, sorry, you said it's black?
It'll be black.
Is this something you need to review, Bruce? The bracket itself? For the sign,
The sign for color.
which,
Do we have a?
in this, which in this case, this applicant has submitted the sign itself, but nothing specific in regard to the bracket.
Yeah, I just noticed that, I was just kind of flipping through real quick. I saw the sign originally, but I didn't see it, I thought the bracket was with it, it's not.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be perpendicular to the building. Any detail, do you have detail for the bracket, or?
I don't, because it's just like a metal bar.
So it's just gonna be just a regular steel?
Yeah, just like a straight.
It's gonna come straight out without anything going up this support?
Do you know if it's
Yeah.
being affixed to the wood or the brick? The application just says either or. Does that matter?
Yeah, I think where exactly you're going to hang the sign to is somewhat important.
On the facade of it's a brick building, and then about 18 to 20 feet up.
So, yeah.
Did you say 18 to 20 feet up?
Mhm.
So above the cornice over the store?
Mm-hmm.
Is it, so it's on the wood part of the,
On the brick,
so it's to the side,
yes.
up above the, sort of the first, yeah.
Oh.
Oh, here.
Right, yeah, so it'll be below that, that's off.
So it's not 18 or 20 feet. 8 to
No.
10 feet, if that,
Yeah, I'm just curious the consistency of other signs along that.
mountaintops, and you got Taco Santana, and it's similar, right? Zoom in. It's projecting on 2 stanchions or whatever, and then mountaintops has got the.
So it's somewhat consistent with
Yeah.
tacos.
Yeah.
The variety's okay, but
Yeah, no, understood.
You don't want uniformity.
I like the sign art.
And it's 30 by 30. Size-wise,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah, just in front of the sidewalk there. It can't be more than 30.
yeah, I mean, a couple things that are, so we want to make sure that for the record, that it's at least clear where you're hanging this. So it's, I don't know how even to sort of describe this, but it's below the facade cornice. I'm not sure if we're catching all of this, Mercedes. On the left brick facade. Left brick facade. And, yeah, I mean, it's, in my view, as far as height, it just needs to meet code,
Sounds good.
right?
Sounds
So, in compliance with code height restrictions. And then, would love to have seen the bracket, but since you don't have it, and I don't want to make you come back next month, I think once you hang it, Bruce, if you could just have a look, make sure if there's anything non-compliant.
As per description, I'm looking for
Yep.
a round pole coming perpendicular without an angle support.
Without a vertical angle support, yep. Does that help, Mercedes? Yep, you got that? Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
So, with all of that, and the board's understanding of those parameters, I'll accept the motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Len,
Second?
second by Kevin, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we usually, Bruce, do we usually convey to applicants that we need to see the bracket as well?
Yeah, so it's been in our, we have been planning on updating the application so that there's like a checklist of items that need to be submitted with the applications. We just haven't been able to get to it. I'm hoping within the next month or so we can have that done. But prior to the next meeting, I'll make sure I go through, each application that we have everything
Awesome.
submitted with it.
I appreciate that.
It's been a busy couple of months.
Yeah, I know, you got a lot going on, so.
Yeah, we've had quite a bit happen.
Okay, so next up, 2 East Certificate of Appropriate sign for 2 East Main Street. Hi.
Hello, my name is Antonio Guerra, representing the Roundhouse. Put an application for a sign on the building. It's,
Is this pin mounted?
I'm sorry?
Are these pin mounted?
They're stud mounted.
Stud mounted?
Yes.
Yep, so how far off do they set? From the building? How far off?
I believe it's about 2 inches, but
Are they lit?
are they?
Are they lit?
No, the sign will not be lit.
Pretty clear.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I was hoping it would be painted on the brick and, distressed.
Yeah, like old style distressed paint.
But
Yeah, I was wondering about
it's not my building, so I,
Little neon sign with an arrow.
Oh, I see what
Yeah,
you're saying. Yeah,
we
that-
thought
yeah.
about it.
I was gonna say, why not paint the aluminum for the industrial kind of vibe, but.
There's hotel rooms right there, and we don't want it lit up all night.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Plus,
No, I wasn't saying lighting, I think Kevin was saying, would've been cool if it was painted on the brick like a, one of the old
Like an
traditional
old
signs.
mo-
like
mural,
a
yeah.
Calypso. I was just saying, why not unpainted aluminum instead of painted white to get kind of the industrial vibe but
I mean,
It's totally fine.
I have no objection to this.
nor do I.
Motion to approve.
Motion?
Motion by Dave.
Second?
Second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for sitting through all of that for a brief review. Next item on the agenda is, changing it up here a little, new single-family house at 49 Townsend Street, Lot 10. You're back.
13 lots. You have to come back a bunch of times. So, you've received in your packet, these are the true colors here. So the shamrock, there's a board and batten on the bottom. And the, this is the shakes, Royal Heather, be a vinyl shake on the top, and a black roof. Full
And,
porch,
by your rendering, white trim.
white trim, white windows, white trim. So I don't have the actual board and batten, but that's the color.
Yep. Questions, comments, notes?
I think you've gotten better at detailing. I know we're just selecting but like the porch, the way the porch is situated on the building, I think it's a lot better. Just a comment, you know.
Thank you.
So, motion to approve.
Motion?
Motion by Kevin,
Second.
second by David, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank
thank you.
Next. Certificate of appropriateness, facade 18 South Street. Sure, why not? Save me craning my neck and,
Actually, you'll appreciate it, it's a nice package.
sure. Is this two? Yeah. What?
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. So basically, we're looking to update our existing windows in the back and make a couple of additional windows on the side of the house. We live on the end of the row houses at South Street. So for context, we're just showing a couple of photographs of what it looks like from South Street, what it looks like from Main Street. You can't really see it from Main Street, but you can see the side facade from the parking lot next to the vault.
Just for John's summary, am I correct also that the porch is being rebuilt 2 feet larger than, did I get that right?
Yeah, we would ask to do that.
So it's the window replacements, some window
Yep.
changes, and then the larger rear porch. And the door being relocated.
SketchUp?
Revit.
That's Revit?
Yeah, Revit and Rhino a little bit.
Nice.
Thanks.
You don't get these kinds of applications in Revit.
Yeah, it's a nice package, we appreciate it.
You use Revit? Does you?
Yes. We're architectural designers.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Landscape for me.
Can you teach Ari how to model terrain in Revit?
Oh, burn. Burn.
Teach me too. I could never figured it out.
I still haven't mastered CAD. I'm just too old. Don't even ask me about Revit. I don't know how these young people do it. Looks nice. Questions, comments? Accept the motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Motion by Len.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by, was that David?
Oh.
Was that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, we're back to signs, certificate of appropriateness, 512 Main Street. Hi.
Did we skip one?
No? Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, yes, we did, excuse me.
We can
But
go back.
it's
if
okay,
someone-
stay there. We just,
Okay.
as long as 36,
Russell doesn't get.
Russell forgives you.
Shuffle. This is the case and.
So we are on
Yeah.
512 Main. Kate? Oh, Kite? Is it Kate or Kite?
Kate.
Kate, this is the, this is the forgiveness, not permission application.
What's that?
The signs are.
It's the forgiveness, not permission.
I forgot that I had to get permission to.
The sign's up, and Kevin's like, no, it's not. I'm like, I'm hallucinating, but I'm pretty sure I saw.
That's
it
what I
walking the
thought.
dog.
Yeah.
Bruce came a knocking?
Yes.
The popo got you.
It's a good thing it's not an ugly sign.
Yeah, I've always liked the graphic.
I like your graphic.
It's very consistent with the block in size, height, shape. I think it aesthetically looks very pleasing, hopefully.
You didn't say so yourself.
Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second by Kevin, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, back to 36 Russell, forgive me. Applicant here for 36 Russell, we have a facade review.
Why? Skipped over in more than one way.
Yeah, really. I guess maybe I just
Shared
showed
them
the
off.
fact that there's nobody here. Sometimes we've reviewed these things in absentia and approved.
This one's taking forever to load.
But,
Yeah,
since this
that
is...
just happened to me. I'm wondering whether it's,
Oh,
Oh, okay, cool.
hi.
I'm also here to ask forgiveness and
Ah.
permission.
Oh,
I didn't realize our house was in a historic district. So when we went to get a permit for our hot tub, we were told our fence needed a certificate of appropriateness.
I know what this is. It's a wooden fence around the
Yeah.
back of the house.
oh, I saw this. I couldn't figure out what it was, yeah.
For some reason, it's slow to load, but.
Wait, is this the one with the garden fence?
Well,
And
there's
then I thought as long as I'm asking for a certificate for the existing fence, I might as well ask for one for the planned fence as well.
just throw it in there.
That's what I did.
Yeah. So, give us a second, it's still loading.
It's probably just it's a large file. Yeah, and it's going to be a clear finish.
Yeah, that's what I
Fence,
was.
right? And then the garden fence is completely enclosed within the, or is it within?
That'll be on the street side next to First Street. And there's several others in the neighborhood similar, so I just thought I'd do a similar.
So you had some photos of comparable. That's
Yeah.
probably what's taking so long to load.
Yeah, that takes forever.
It'll get there. Public access is marvelous.
As, can you open up 246 Main quicker?
Yeah.
Just maybe let that load in the background.
We do.
And as his penance, while we wait for your application to load so we can see it.
We'll do another one maybe. Don't go anywhere though.
If we- yeah.
Oh, 'cause
If
it's
you don't mind,
the big
it's
pictures.
taking forever to open up.
Yeah. So if you don't mind hanging out until it
Yeah.
loads, and we'll just jump to, oh, you have his?
Okay.
You have his? Oh, okay.
Like mine finally loaded.
Yeah, otherwise it's.
Oh,
bad.
here we go.
Thank you. Cedar fence, dog-eared, 6-foot high around backyard with clear stain. Garden fence inside yard with 6-foot high wire mesh.
Yeah, so that's the existing fence that comes out.
So it's set quite a bit back from the street, more lined up with the corners of the house sort of thing.
So we're approving your fence in the historic district.
This would be the proposed additional item.
So are you using the same fencing for the garden?
No.
Oh, it's wire mesh. Oh, here it is.
That's a comparable.
Yeah.
That's like a block from my house, but we thought we'd do very similar.
So so it's proposed.
The one fence exists, that one doesn't.
Yeah. Does he need approval on this?
Not for the garden. The
Oh.
other fence, I think, just because it's, the way it's worded is how you see it from the street.
Yeah.
It's his property. So
I think
the
there's-
the cedar, cedar's not big.
And once you put the clear sealer on it, it's going to only weather slightly, is that right?
That's what I've been told, yeah. It's supposed to have a sunblock in it.
It's a nice material. It's not it's not a great profile in my opinion, but it will prevent people from seeing you while you're in your hot tub, which will probably.
Well, and it's what would have been there.
Which is better.
150 years
no.
ago.
Understood. Okay. Motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by David,
Second.
second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, certificate of appropriateness, 246 Main Street.
We're proposing some finish changes to the facade at 246 Main Street and on the North Walnut Street facade as well. We also attached a picture that shows the way that this is actually pretty similar to a previous version of the building, historically speaking. We're just replacing all of any damaged of the historical trim in kind, refinishing the paint and the brick, and replacing the windows in the existing openings.
It's Max's.
And you're painting it white?
Yeah, and it's really interesting. This is actually, it used to be white.
Used to be white.
In a similar way with the dark trim.
Looks nice.
Keith, bring it
Yeah.
over to say.
Are you using masonry paint? Okay.
Yeah, because you know what happens to brick if you put crappy old paint on it.
It's actually painted red over the.
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
That's what it is?
So you taking the existing paint off?
As much as possible, yeah.
You're gonna,
Because it's peeling off most of it.
yeah, you're gonna
Yeah, because-
sandblast it or power wash it or?
A little bit of both possibly, just so. Most of it is pretty easy to come off just because it's old and,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Anything that's coming off, it needs to be off.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, yeah,
there's,
of course, otherwise.
it wrecks the brick. In the mortar, it's not good if,
It needs a little bit of repointing to the mortar.
yeah.
Cool. And then are you replacing windows?
Yes, we are with Anderson 400 series. There's two phases to the construction. The first one, we're going to change only the first windows on the first floor. And then also in the front facing the building, there was previously higher openings for both the windows and the doors, but they framed them, so we're just looking to extend them all the way. Install doors and windows the full size that there is there.
That's nice. And you're adding light fixtures?
We're adding them back in existing locations that were covered over.
Do we need to get, just make sure the lighting is compliant with the.
You just have to follow code.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
But just to be clear that the second and third floor, we're not going to replace the windows just yet. We're only going to seal them to make sure that they're okay and we're not getting the water until the second phase.
Yeah, I understand. And so they're existing wood sash, right?
Yeah.
And you're painting them?
So what trim is going to be replaced in kind specifically?
Just any like water damaged areas to the cornice and the friezes, anything like that.
So you're repairing it?
Yeah.
Will it be like, is there anything that you would have to, get a knife made and reproduce an element? Or the only reason I ask this is that we had an applicant come in on another and say, we're going to repair the damaged sections of the cornice, and it's gonna be a full restoration. And it was, you know, it had a scroll kind of profile, and the repair was they just
Like Home
put a
Depot.
board in at an angle. It
They
was a
went-
flat board, I don't think, I'm
We got
not
like a
saying that you would
Home
do that,
Depot
but
trim profile.
do you swear that you will actually replace it?
Do you solemnly swear?
Every day I walk past it, and the shutters.
I know, you know what's funny, is every time I look at that, I think of you. Seriously.
Think of my fury.
Yes.
Just simmering.
Yes.
Also, in the north Walnut side, so that little corner that doesn't have any, before it had shingles that they were put as siding, so we're just hoping to replace those and do LP smart siding and make it better.
Yeah,
On the extension to the.
yep, those little sheds.
Yep.
And you're putting a mural sign there of distressed lettering?
This is our question whether we can or cannot do it. This whole-
Evan wants this really badly. He
I-
wants
it's-
you to paint it on the brick and make it look a little bit weathered, like exactly like that, so it's like that palimpsest.
Yeah.
And then
That's
see,
what-
you're gonna get your wish tonight, just not where you were
Yeah, and then
originally
like
asking for it.
20 other people will do it, and it'll be so disappointing.
Yeah, so and we'll talk about the size, though, I think has to go down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the code requires a little less for signage. So they might have to shrink that down a little bit, that little.
Do you know the dimensions, or?
I forgot off the top of my head. I had it the other day, and I mentioned it, but I don't
And
remember
that's-
what I had said.
That's written into the code, because I mean, there's existing stuff like the old mail pouch tobacco on East Main that's enormous,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
That was
I mean,
before
unless
Bruce
you
caught
guys
him.
feel otherwise, I mean, if you feel it.
You know what I'm
there's
talking about,
something-
like when you look down
Yeah,
past the
yeah,
dummy
yeah.
lake,
The
the old mail pouch tobacco
Yeah, I
painting
see
and
all
all.
the codes to it, though, it's
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
But I-
comply with the code.
Yeah.
And Bruce will help you there. If I may make one suggestion, and forgive me, but, and this may be your logo, and you may not be able to modify it, but forgive me for saying this. When I first saw it, I read Lion Shark.
No. Shark. Lion
Shark.
share. Shark. I know it's.
The size can be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying.
The top bar on the E, that's all.
No, what I'm saying is that it blends. So if you do make it smaller, you're able to maybe separate the word lion, lions, and heart, so it doesn't read lion shark.
Oh, is it Lions?
Oh,
Yes, that's what I got. This is
Oh,
where you
famous.
come to get the lion's share in
That's
terms
named
of
after a famous.
sustenance.
Okay, so that's better. It's not a T.
Go.
Okay.
Lion.
I thought it was lion's heart.
Should also,
Lion
should also call
share.
it the Rorschach Public House.
Okay. In general, all looks great. Just curious, Bruce, just in terms of the phasing of this, right? And so what we're doing is we're approving the replacement of windows on all the floors. However, you're going to phase this and you're going to do this upper floors some other time. What's the statute of limitations on this approval? Or is it
I don't
good
know,
in
I've never, to be
perpetuity?
honest, I haven't looked to see if there is a limitation on the approval.
So it's
Do
good
you-
for.
Do you have a time frame of when you're gonna go and start working on the second floor?
We're just so focused on the first floor
On the
right
first
now,
floor.
but I would say not within 9 months.
But that's not to say that the whole facade won't be cohesive.
No, no.
Yeah, it's
No,
all
no.
gonna look,
I'm just saying, we're, you know, giving you approval that you're gonna invoke, you know, some 9 months from now. I guess that's fine. As long as you're okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, if they're gonna go ahead and do if you want to approve the second floor windows, you know, as they're proposing, I guess the first floor windows are gonna be replaced.
Yeah.
The second and third floor will be the same window,
Same window,
correct?
same thing, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's better
it's
to,
up-
it's better to approve it now.
Yeah.
It's up to you if you want to
Yeah.
approve
As
it
long
now,
as
and
it- as long as
they
it doesn't
save them a
take-
return trip.
As long as it doesn't take so long to do that you find that suddenly you're having trouble getting the exact same product, and now the thing is changing, but you're not coming back to us because we already approved it all.
Yeah.
But 3 years went by.
Standard windows
and
that are-
Now it starts to
yeah.
get wiggly.
Yeah, I mean, I
think this is what
bought
we're trying to avoid.
400s 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
they're not going out of style or production. Yeah, so just know that we're approving this, and 9 months from now, don't do something different.
No.
And if you want to do something different, please come back, but, fine. Okay,
Set on this.
great. Yeah, looks really great. I'm gonna miss Max's, but it's always nice to have new folks in town, so welcome. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Motion by David.
Second?
Second by Len. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, before I have to go sign all that crap.
Yep.
20 though, man.
Motion to, I was going to say motion to dismiss. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Len.
Second?
Second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yes.